Hello and welcome to Perception Media. I'm your hostess, the Cinegeek, and I am doing part 2 of the evolution of vampires in cinema. And I'm sorry this is so long. I realized I wrote a 10-page article. Oh, why have I seen so many vampire movies? It's actually sad. But I'm just going to go right into Fright Night from 1985, which is, I think, one of the most underrated vampire films. It's a horror comedy, intentionally, and it's one of the few movies I've seen that actually walks the line really well of horror and comedy. It blends these two genres very, very well. It's essentially Rear Window, but with vampires, and it kind of illustrates the issues of suburban life. Basically, it drives people crazy. And so we have like these normal people who don't believe in ghouls, and you need evidence and facts. I don't like that. And then we do have a 1988 sequel that's just silly, and a 2011 remake, which is cool. And this movie shows, again, vampires as being very alluring, and when you change into a vampire, you become attractive and strong, and possibly that's why it's alluring. You get to stay young and beautiful forever. You're appealing and powerful and seductive. And in the end, of course, you know, the humans win. But there's this scene where the one vampire turns into a werewolf, and we're starting to get that connection again, but we haven't really seen vampires turn into werewolves before, and so that's a little bit new, and we're opening up the lore a bit more for vampires. And honestly, Evil's death is so sad. Like, you actually see this kid die, and the transformation, which is, of course, not CGI at all. It's so good. Like, even, you know, being as old as it is, it's really great. And I do like the remake. It has its ups and downs for me, but I think the original Fright Night is just, again, one of the best vampire films, and for what they were able to do is really great. Now, talking about comedies, we have to talk about 1985's Once Bitten, with a young Jim Carrey, and the dude who played Bart in Blazing Saddles. We have a young, beautiful woman who has to drink the blood of a virgin every 100 years. And this movie has a lot of, you know, themes about virginity and purity again, but it kind of turns it around, and it makes it more funny for, you know, in 1985 modern day twist of nobody is a virgin anymore. It's so hard to find someone like that. You have to go with a child to find someone who is, which is weird. And so they end up attacking Jim Carrey, and it's really funny. It's a silly film, but I enjoy it. It's interesting. It definitely walks the line of hitting all the marks of a vampire film. Then we're going to go to 1987's The Lost Boys. And here is our first just outright teen vampire movie. No, Fright Night is, but not like this movie. This movie is focused on teen vampires. Not a movie about vampires for teens. This is about teen vampires. Quote the tagline: "Sleeping all day, partying all night, never grow old, never die. It's fun to be a vampire." It's cool. It shows cool California boys. A comic book store. Again, teen vampires versus teen vampire hunters. It's about a family dynamic. This has everything. It's unique. It's Joel Schumacher's best movie. Because what has he done other than the Batman and Robin movies? And the head vampire is recruiting, but he isn't the focus. This time the focus is on, you know, the underling vampires. And, I mean, we got the two Corys. What more do you want? I almost said Donald Sutherland. Not Donald Sutherland, although he has been in quite a few vampire movies. His son, David Sutherland. It's so fun. Now we're going to go to 1987's Near Dark, which is very similar to The Lost Boys in tone, but it's a lot more serious. This guy's bitten by, I think she's a hooker, but she's also a vampire. She gets lured in just like David did in The Lost Boys, and there's like a vampire family. And they take the one guy, but then his family cures him of vampirism, which is actually apparently really easy. Just takes like a blood transfusion. It's it's just Lost Boys, but more boring, but it does have a pretty stellar cast, so if it's on, watch it, but I wouldn't recommend like going out of your way to seek it out. Then we get a movie that I mentioned that was like Martin earlier, 1988's A Vampire's Kiss, and I said I guarantee you've seen a meme. This is a movie where Nicolas Cage is overacting like a mofo, and it's spectacular. Where he's just, he thinks he's a vampire, and he may or may not be a vampire, because he may or may not have been bitten by a vampire, but a lot of the things he's doing, like, that he's mimicking other vampire films. It's pretty cool. It's psychological. It skirts that line between super serious, like when he just literally outright rapes his secretary and he's like terrorizing her throughout the whole film, versus comedic aspects where he is just overacting like a crazy person, because he is a crazy person in this film. And I don't know if I would necessarily say it's underrated. It's really uncomfortable, I say the movie is, but it's interesting, definitely worth a watch just to know where that meme came from alone, and to see that it is a good performance on Nicolas Cage's part. And then we get to 1999, one of my favorite series, which is Subspecies, and there are 4 main films with a spin-off called Vampire Journals. And this movie kind of blends this new developing mythos and creates their own. We have Radu, who is a kind of Nosferatu-esque looking vampire, and his half-brother Stefan, who's more of your brooding teen heartthrob. And they're the son of a king, and their half-brother, so Stefan is the son of the king with a mortal, and that's why he's kind of like Blade, I guess. But he can't go out in the daylight. And then Radu is the son of the king, who is a vampire, and a witch, and they're both out to get this thing called the Bloodstone, which would allow them to go out into the sun. And then Radu kind of carries the rest of the films, which I'll pick up after each one left off. They're interesting. I love them, personally. I think they're really great, underrated films. Then we're going to go into, like, 1992, which had a very, 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 very important film, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Not the TV show, the movie, which was also written by Joss Whedon. I guess it was a test pilot to see if the movie would, or the TV show would work. And obviously the TV show was super important when it came to vampires. I mean, Buffy lasted 7 seasons, has a comic book as a spin-off, and then Angel lasted an additional 5 seasons. It's pretty crazy. I mean, it has your vampire with a soul, although the original TV show was just, California culture and 90s bops, and if that isn't what you want, I don't know what is. And then in 1992 also brought us a very, very, very important film, Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, with Gary Oldman as Dracula, Anthony Hopkins as Van Helsing, Winona Ryder as Mina. I mean, it's a huge, huge, popular, famous cast. Keanu Reeves is in it. Like, everybody's in this movie. And it's not a horror movie, like, at all. It's a pure, dark, sensual romance. It's bloody. It ends tragically. It is sad. And I think everyone who's watched it this is probably one of their favorite Dracula movies. I've said mine is already as Frank Languella's. It is good, though. Then, of course, we have to go to 1994, Interview with the Vampire, and it's sexualized AF. This is about elegant creatures and desire, and it shows these vampires as these beautiful creatures, and it involves the moral implications of being a vampire, which I really like, and this one goes more into it than all of the other ones. Of course, we have sequel, although they didn't make the actual sequel of the movie. They made the 3rd movie as a sequel, Queen of the Damned, which is even more sexualized than the first movie. I really like these movies, both of them. Queen of the Damned has a great soundtrack to nothing else. Then we get Mel Brooks's spoof, that is Dracula's Dead and Loving It. Typical Mel Brooks movie. What else needs to be said? There are some ones I'm leaving out, like Kindred the Embraced. I doubt anyone's ever heard of it. Quentin Tarantino dipped his feet into the vampire genre with From Dusk Till Dawn, which is a more Spanish version, and it hits those notes. And if you haven't seen any vampire films from Mexico, I recommend them. They're cool. I haven't really talked about them here, but they are more sexy. It's a little bit more interesting. But I mean, honestly, this is a movie that the fact that vampires in it is a twist, and you don't see them until far later in the film. It just have 2 sequels and a TV show. I haven't watched any of them. I do like the original movie though. It's really cool. It's a giant vampire bar fight. What's not to love? John Carpenter did a vampire movie called Vampires. It's a western, but with vampires, and your typical John Carpenter movie. Then we get to 1998, where we have Blade, and now we're starting to get into your comic book vampires, but not Morbius. So yes, this is a black-led vampire movie. There have been others that were more blaxploitation films back in the 70s when that was a popular genre. This is again a Marvel property. Blade is a half human, half vampire who can walk in the sun, and he uses swords to kill other vampires. And we'll see this exact same plot later. But it's not great effects, but it's a cool story, and it did well at its time. And who doesn't love swords? And yeah, action movies, fun stuff. Dracula 2000 is nothing noteworthy. The first Underworld came out in 2003, and now we're getting into sequel territory. There are, I think, 5 of these now, and we get the werewolf versus vampire war, which is actually kind of interesting, and we get this idea that there are, again, different, like, factions of vampires, which I feel like really started with Kindred the Embraced, which was originally a White Wolf RPG, and I don't know. The first one was cool, the rest aren't. But I do like the idea of the werewolf vampire war. I like the factions. It does have a lot of mythos to it. It's interesting. There's rules, order, politics. Then we get in 2004 Van Helsing, which stars the same person from Underworld and Hugh Jackman. And this is the first movie to kind of do what the Dark Universe was supposed to do, where we have, like, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, Igor, Frankenstein's monster, Van Helsing, who is technically the Archangel Michael. We have Dracula, who's, like, the son of Lucifer. We have all the people with werewolves, everything. And, yeah, this is the only movie that's ever brought in all of them together. Didn't have the Invisible Man, though. And they did. I enjoy that movie. I know a lot of people don't. It's fun. Then we get to 2007, which has, I think, one of the greatest vampire movies ever made, which is 30 Days of Night. And this is a true horror film. This is us getting back to horror movies with vampires as scary things, although they're more ghoul than vampire in this. And I'm not going to talk about I Am Legend because, no. I have the book, though, but I don't really see those as being vampires. This is kind of like 30 Days a Night is like the crazy, where you have an isolated town. I think it's in Alaska, where the sun doesn't shine for like months at a time, which is the perfect place for a vampire setting. I don't know why that's never been done before. It's great. It's a scary location. It's unique. The entire town is infested or gets invaded by these scary vampires, and they like kill almost everyone. It's a really good film. I'd totally recommend it. Probably better to watch in the summer than the winter, especially if you live somewhere where the sun doesn't shine for like months at a time. Creepy. Of course, then we have to go to 2008, 2014. HBO had the show True Blood, which is violent, but damn, it is sexy. We have vampires drinking synthetic blood, and again, we're starting to get into more like vampires having their own society, which is very political. There's hierarchy, there's rules, which we have seen now a few times, and this is just we've stepped away from having vampires be vampires and have them essentially be people who drink blood. Very, very sexy people who stay on forever who drink blood. But, I don't know, I like all the organization that is in these. Then we get to 2008, 2014, where we have the Twilight Saga. Overly teenage stuff. Well, specifically for teenage Christians. Think about it. And then we get the Vampire Diaries, which is another TV show based on a series of books. And now we're getting into young adult novel territory, which was all the rage in the earlier to maybe a couple years ago, 2000 era. We get Blood, The Last Vampire in 2009, which is, again, we have a manga where we have a half human, half vampire who uses swords to kill other vampires. Blade. Except a girl. Then we get Daybreakers in 2009, which we're getting some more sci-fi vampire movies. Ooh, I think I forgot one. Oh, anyway, this was kind of cool, where we're talking about themes of natural versus limited resources in terms of blood. This is a society where humans are all but extinct. Only 3% of the population are humans. The rest are all vampires, and they're kind of freaking out over whether or not blood is going to be around for much longer. And then we have A Cure for Vampirism. This to me is Fahrenheit 451, but for vampires, and I think it's very interesting. I love the idea of it. Then we're going to get in 2010, Let Me In, or Let the Right One In, which is an Asian film that was remade in the US. And it's creepy, but I do like it's about friendship at the end, but it is a horror movie. And you don't usually see horror movies like centered around children, and that is this dark and ultimately kind of heartwarming. It's hard to talk about, but it is great. We get Priest, which is 2011 post-apocalyptic action western. I think it has a cool lore. I'm sad it didn't do as well as they wanted. We have 2014, Dracula Untold. We're going back to Transylvania, which we haven't been in for a while. Although, yes, Van Helsing was, but this is the first one where we have an actual strict Dracula story, where we're telling it, reversing it, the narrative, where it's Dracula before he was Dracula, how he became Dracula, which was actually popular back in, the early 2000s, but kind of went away from it. Now they're going back to it. We're doing our gritty reboots, because 2010s is all about your gritty reboots. Universal was trying to enter into doing the Dark Universe before The Mummy, and it failed here, and it failed with The Mummy. They need to stop trying. I'm sorry. You had magic once, like 7 years ago. It's just not working. I do like the subverting the expectations, flipping the story around, but this movie really didn't do it for me or anybody else. And we get 2012's Hotel Transylvania, which is Adam Sandler movie. It's fun. It's interesting. I like it. It's funny. It's sweet. So now we're getting vampire movies for children. And then we're going to go straight to 2014, which is the last time I saw a vampire movie that was really good. And it's called The Girl Who Walks Home Alone at Night. And it's an Iranian vampire western that is truly awesome and interesting. It's a crime drama, which is centered around a family and romance and kind of what it is to be a vampire. And I could not recommend it more. I think it's one of the best vampire films to be made in this century. So that has been my evolution of vampires. More recently, we're kind of becoming more IP. What can we sell? What can we serialize? How sexy can you get? And it's starting to become less vampires. They're more, again, like people who just happen to drink blood, and they have their own kind of society and culture and mythos, and with a couple films being the unique film, and that they're taking it back to being these horror films since the genre has opened up quite a bit. So that has been my take on vampires in cinema. Hope you enjoyed it. Sorry it was like 40 minutes long. And have a great day. We need another Dracula meets the Batman movie, and also a Moon Knight movie. Bye!